Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being a part of day 3, our special series of Red Dot Cafe. I'm really excited to be here again today with you, and I hope that this live stream series adds some value and inspiration to your daily life. I'm Angelica Cordero. I'm TEDxSanAntonio's licensee, and again, today I'll be your host for today's event. We want you to take part in the conversation. Please leave your questions and comments in the feed. As the chat continues forward, we'll be monitoring this feed to highlight questions that might be brought to the speakers. We're happy to be joined today by drag queen, comedian, author, and TEDx speaker, Eric Dorsa. In 2016, Eric challenged us to broaden our understanding of identity and labels. His involvement on the Red Dot also made him one of the first drag queens to deliver a TEDx talk across the globe. Today, Eric is joining us to reflect on life since speaking and how we can build space for humor in our day-to-day life while on isolation. Please join me in welcoming Eric Dorsa.
Hi.
Hey! There aren't a lot of people who know in our TEDx community that Eric and I worked together on developing his talk back in 2014. In fact, Eric was the first speaker that I helped curate in the process of his TED Talk. So Eric and I go way back.
You go back, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what your experience was like being a speaker on the stage at that time, and what developing your idea was like for you.
Well, a couple of things. Looking back, I definitely would have done a better job at my wig. No, I'm kidding. For the longest time, I think I had felt that truth of my talk. And I just didn't have a platform or really a way to articulate it. I just knew it and I was living by it. And I was challenged by some friends they're like, this would be, we were just talking casually at my restaurant. And I was telling them like what I've learned about life and identity through being a drag queen. And they said, oh my God, this would be a great TED Talk. And I was like, what's a TED Talk? I know, I can say that. So this was like 2012, 2013. And I got sucked into TED Talks. I could not get enough of them. It really helped me break out of the thought bubbles that I had put myself in regards to my own identity, growing up in a very conservative South Texas, Republican, Italian, Latino family. And it really helped me see that there are so many ways to view life and the world around you. And it really put me in a position to live in curiosity as opposed to fear. And so when I saw that they were taking applications in 2014, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to talk about how playing a character really, for lack of, was suffocating me in my life for the longest time, because it did feel safer. And that's kind of what I really talk about in the talk, is that I learned that we all play characters, especially people who grow up in very rigid communities where there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and doing it the right way means acceptance and doing it the wrong way means rejection. And when you're a kid and growing up, rejection is dangerous to survival. And so I thought, well, what better way to do that than to dress up in drag, talk about what I think is the common humanity that I find dressing up in drag, and then taking it all off and being vulnerable with people and showing them that underneath whatever it is that you're judging or projecting your own fears onto is a real person that is sensitive and beautiful and just wants to be loved and accepted. And I think in a lot of ways, my talk was more prophetic, because after that, I went on an even deeper journey of self-discovery and a deeper understanding of like, where have I been faking it in my life,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. And so yeah.
Um, so tell us a little bit about what happened to you post speaking on the TEDx stage. And you've had a lot happening in your life and a lot of really wonderful and great things too. So what's been going on since you've been on the Red Dot?
First of all, like, I never in a million years thought my talk would be as successful as it was. I think it has over 300,000 views, and I made the mistake one day of reading the comments. Don't do it. People say really mean things, I will say. But I talked about some of them with a friend, because I'm very much in the Brene Brown philosophy of life. Um, Brene for president. But anyway, it it really touched me that so many people from around the world were connecting with me through Facebook and other mediums, telling me just how they had really struggled to learn how to love that part of themselves. And the biggest thing that I got out of that, and still get out of that, I still get messages from people talking about wanting to love that part of themselves that's in the closet. And that's not, and you'll see from my talk, when I talk about the closet, it's not just a gay or LGBTQ experience. It's this idea that there are parts about ourselves that we think are not enough in our relationships, in our work, in our families especially, or just in the world, in our, to ourselves and what we want and hope for out of our own lives. There's these things about ourselves that we fear and we put away. And so many people have reached out to me to talk about what that experience has been like for them. And it's been very healing for myself. Um, and so I went on that journey of going deeper into my closet and realizing that I wanted to pursue drag and acting and comedy my whole life. Comedy is actually what pulled me out of my darker moments. I fell in love with Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire and The Birdcage and Tu Wong Fu, these amazing movies that really shed light on what it's like to be different or misunderstood. And when he passed away, I was devastated. And but I decided that I wanted to pursue comedy. And I began the journey after TEDx of going back to school. Recovery, especially from an eating disorder, which I talk about in my talk, is not easy. It is very hard. For a lot of people, it is very expensive. And being in recovery, I spent almost 10 years getting enough recovery under my belt to be able to go back to school. And now I'm in Chicago going to comedy school, which is temporarily on hiatus because of Corona, as I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing that. So yes, it was a journey of self-discovery and really questioning what limitations I was putting on myself out of fear, that I was not going to succeed or fear of being rejected. I think those are my two biggest fears.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you and I have talked a lot in the last few days about how this isolation that's happening currently with the coronavirus crisis is affecting mental health, or actually bringing that conversation into the limelight.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you, after post talk, were asked to be the ambassador for the Eating Recovery Center. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how, what are we seeing, or what is that community seeing, the recovery community during this time, and how is the crisis impacting them? And what are ways in which those individuals who need resources like the Eating Recovery Center, where can they go for some help right now?
So yeah, I would describe that, like, as someone who self-discloses that I'm in recovery for mental health, I feel really lucky. Like, my recovery is absolutely the foundation that everything else in my life is built on. Without that, then it would all come tumbling down. And I think right now, well, let me backtrack. So the reality is to build that foundation, it takes a lot of love and patience. And I think right now more than ever, especially people who are beginning their journeys in recovery need resources, because just the nature of mental illness and addiction is that it is very isolating. It seeks isolation. And right now we're in a time where we're being told to self-isolate. Um, I'm so grateful for technology because there are Zoom meetings for 12-step recovery. There is, excuse me, I know Eating Recovery Center has online support groups that you can access through their website that are free for people who are struggling with right now with eating disorder behaviors, or just a pullback into eating disorders. But something that I really talk about as an ambassador is there is a very fine line between society's disordered eating and body image and photoshopping and this obsession that society has with perfectionism because it sells. People buy more when they feel like crap about themselves. And this idea of what is disordered eating. And so that's something that I really talk about in when I speak as an ambassador. It's a volunteer position. I don't get paid to do it. I don't want to get paid to do it because recovery is about community and I think authenticity. And so it really helps me stay in my own recovery to get to do that. And I think right now a lot of people are just are scared, and fear is also very isolating. So I would say find ways to connect, like FaceTime the people that you love and you care about. Find people that you can be honest with about what you're really thinking and what you're really feeling. If you can, go for walks and just make sure that you go slow enough that you can safely stay at a 6-foot distance from people, and just find ways to connect and see what resources are available for you to find support. And I think you sent me a really fun. What did you send me? Just fun memes, find comedy, find ways to laugh. Like I made Quarantina. It's something that I learned in comedy school.
Yeah.
Um,
So I know that what part of what we had talked about bringing you on today to talk about is that, yeah, there's a lot of really awful things that can come out of being in isolation, and I know that for many people in recovery or who deal with certain aspects of mental health, that they struggle, and that these are moments of trigger, honestly, to be so cut off from the rest of the world. And something that I've always kind of commiserated with is how in our struggles of dealing with our own issues with mental health, that we turn to comedy.
mhm.
And so I was hoping that maybe you'd be able to expand a little bit and provide some tools to our audience on how they can build humor into their day-to-day routine while they're at home.
Well, totally. First of all, I will just tell you, like, real life is stranger than fiction. Okay. Like, never in a million years would I thought my senior year of comedy school that I worked so hard to get to, 10 years, would it end in a total pandemic and shutdown. Like, I want my degree to say, got this degree in a pandemic. I'm gonna slap that on my resume. Because, life is stranger than fiction. And I would say real life is funnier than comedy. And that's one of the first things that they teach you, is to really pay attention to what it is that makes you laugh. And lean into those moments with curiosity. Like, learn about yourself. To thine own self be true. I'm so grateful because I am at Second City. I still am somewhat in an online capacity, which is total bullshit. But what are you going to do? You know, Corona is its own scary little thing floating around there. So I understand. But they teach you to get to know yourself. That's the first thing they do. Why do you want to do comedy? What do you find funny? And so as an artist going into comedy, you almost have to get unfunny for a while. You get very serious. And I hated it. I was like, I just want to be funny. I want to look at the funny stuff because so much of my life before that was just not funny, you know? But something that I find really interesting that I learned recently before, you know, everything blew up was that cognitive research shows that when something makes you uncomfortable, it's actually very beneficial and healthy to find ways to make fun of it, because then it helps you do this thing in psychology that they call, what's the word I'm looking for? When you accept something, it helps you accept it. And so it's actually beneficial to not avoid it. But humor is a way to lean into it, as they say, lean into the discomfort. And so I think right now, finding the things that are just annoying about being in isolation, learning not to take yourself too seriously. So much of comedy is about expanding on loving your flaws, loving people's flaws. So I'll give you an example. Character writing 101 is a comedic character has a flaw, like an over exaggerated, annoying flaw that just gets in the way of everything. The best example I have is Lucille Ball in I Love Lucy. Her flaw is that she is unbelievably optimistic and thinks that she can do absolutely anything. Like, there's nothing she cannot do. And she finds her, and that flaw is what naturally leads her into these crazy scenarios. Granted, also in that show, like, a lot of reality is suspended, like a giant loaf coming out of the oven and pinning her up against the wall. Like, that would never happen in real life. But that is her flaw. But what you love about her, so as much as you have a flaw, there has to be a redeeming quality for it to be comedy and not just tragedy or just stupid. Is that she means well. She's incredibly loving and lovable. She only wants to help. And so that, I think, is fun with yourself. Like, what are your flaws? So they really teach you in comedy to focus on yourself.
That's interesting. So what are some things as you are in isolation at home, from a character writing perspective, what are some of the things that you're noticing that you're finding inspiration from in order to kind of laugh in the same vein of what you're talking about?
I try so hard to remind myself that I cannot take life seriously. I cannot. There's so many things in life that I have absolutely no control over. And so trying to take it seriously, on a very real note, I stay plugged into the things that feed my soul. So I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. I have been creating a lot. Like, I created a little talk show through my Instagram Live where I dress up in drag and I just do Instagram Lives with my friends, who some are drag queens, some are artists, some are just really fun friends of mine that are into like fitness or just weird fun stuff. More to come. This Friday, actually, I am going to be interviewing one of my Second City professors. So I just always think about, okay, in this situation, how can I stay in a place to create? So, and how I got there was just in my life. In the beginning, like, I did not like that I was a drag queen. I mean, there were so many parts of myself that I just took way too seriously. And and it caused me a lot of pain. And that's a lot of what my talk was about, that faking it. And I realized that like the universe, God, I believe in a higher power, created me with these gifts and these talents, and they're meant to be shared, and to challenge myself always to find a way to share them. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm never going to, cure a disease. I'm not going to be a lawyer unless it's on TV, and I better be a drag queen lawyer. But I have this ability to make people laugh. I have this ability to create a character. I created Fonda Cox, and I have other characters that I've created. And so when this happened, I was like, the only way I'm going to stay sane through this is if I keep creating and I keep staying connected to the things that make me fall in love with my life. And so one of the things that I thought was real fun in comedy school is to create a character out of an object. And so I decided to create Quarantina out of a teacup and like my old false lashes and, hair extensions. So I created a character out of an object and I gave her a personality. And then from there, if you are a writer or you are a creator or an actor, it's a very helpful tool, because then this character, you can explore that personality and then you can incorporate that personality into yourself.
So what's funny with what you're bringing up right now is I know that there's been a lot of memes and a lot of just dark humor in this time of being in isolation on quarantine at home in isolation. And one of the things that I saw was that since all of us that are couples now are at home and we're stuck with our significant other working from home, that someone's made a wonderful suggestion to basically make up somebody who is your third coworker who doesn't necessarily exist and just blame everything on them.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a fantastic idea.
It's not necessarily a physical object that is in the house, but it is an interesting way to look at how you can displace some of the frustrations that I think that some of us are feeling, right? And try to look at the underlying humor of the situation and so forth. So tell us a little bit more about Quarantine, and how did you come to selecting a coffee or a teacup in order to as your character for your object?
There are some things about my brain that I have learned not to question, but just go with. I have no idea, honestly. Like these ideas, I think once I got rid of all of I wouldn't say I got rid of, but I really learned how to just accept shame that I had about growing up the way that I did. And I really started leaning more so into my drag persona and accepting the boy underneath the character, like this vessel that creates all of these characters and writes all of these stories and, does this. It kind of just comes, and I've learned to pay attention and go with it. So I was having a very meaningful conversation via FaceTime with a friend in recovery because I was in struggle. I was really struggling. And I think it's important to say that, even 10 years into eating disorder recovery, I still get thoughts. I still get urges. I've just practiced staying, honoring that first impulse, not shaming it, and reaching out and asking for help. And so we're having this really awesome, funny conversation about recovery. And I was drinking coffee at the time. And I thought, well, this is a way that I can be helpful as an advocate and as someone in recovery, is I can host these talks out of my living room. Why not? And then the living room turned into this Pinterest bedroom set up with tea lights and whatnot. And just having these really awesome conversations that have just meant so much to me in my life, and sharing them with people who maybe don't really know how to articulate what they're feeling or what they're thinking. The most powerful words in my recovery have been "me too." It's not trying to find an answer, but instead sharing the question with as many people as possible, understanding that you're not the only person with that question. And that's kind of like with comedy. What I like things that I've learned in comedy that I think not only help me with my mental health, but also like help me navigate life is yes and.
Mhm.
Yes and. There is no in comedy. It is yes and. Tina Fey has an amazing book where she talks about it.
Yeah.
It's about saying yes to what's going on and how can I make it better? How can I add to this?
Yeah. So something just to expand a little bit on the whole yes and philosophy. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you are standing opposite someone that you are going to engage with in this improv, that in your mentality, whatever they do, you respond to. There's no negating action. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That whole
It's like if someone
philosophy
goes up
behind
on
it?
stage. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What was that
No,
last
you're
part?
fine. No, go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So if somebody comes on stage and we're going to do a scene together, because a really useful tool in writing is that you will improvise something with a given set of circumstances. And then from there, you'll pull from that and you will find the things that worked. And then you'll sit down with your group of writers or just by yourself and expand on those things and create fully realized scenes. So improv is a really useful tool. And it can be scary, but it involves this very real thing that I think also transcends just acting, but also right now and real life of getting into a spirit of playfulness. Like growing up, when you were a kid and you weren't conscious about the world and its rules and all of its bull, and you were just creating from inside, like playing, the good cop, bad cop, or Tom and Jerry, or whatever it was, getting back into this idea of like, there's stakes. I'm just playing. I get to play. And tapping back into that innocence of discovery, I think it's very helpful. And when you look at life that way, like this is all a dress rehearsal. This is not a final performance. Things can change at any time. And so when you walk onto stage with that understanding, it's about whatever is presented to you, accept it and go with it. So if my scene partner comes on stage and is like, scalpel, we need to do surgery, I'm supposed to say yes and not go, oh, wait, I wanted you to be this character because I had this thing in my head. And then the
Yeah.
scene dies and then it goes nowhere. I can't come out on stage as your brother with golf clubs when you're a doctor in the OR.
Or you
Or I
could.
can, and we can just try to find a way to make it work. There's a maybe and.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a really interesting idea about the whole yes and that I really love, which is really just that you're basically building on the previous idea, right? So something like what you just said about like pass me the scalpel. The thing that I think is for me would be a response would be something like about like carving a turkey, like I didn't realize it was Thanksgiving,
Yes,
like,
and yeah,
and it's really just, I do like that concept of it at all.
there's so many possibilities, and all are okay, all are valid. It's about
Mhm.
learning to look at life with less judgment and more curiosity.
Yeah, I do
Uh,
like that idea that there's no wrong way about it in improv. Every way is the right way,
if
which
I have
is
a
what
cylinder,
yes and is awesome.
if I
Yeah.
have a cylinder and I'm shining the light directly on it and it's casting a shadow, it's going to cast the shadow of a circle. But then if I go to the side of it and I cast a shadow of that cylinder, it's going to be a rectangle.
Yeah.
Whether a circle is a rectangle, it's the same thing, just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, Eric, it's been a great 30 minutes that we've had together. Just time always flies by so fast when we get together. One little quick thing before we wrap up. When we were getting ready, you had shared with me one funny little song that you had taken the lyrics of. It's a popular song. He's going to hate me for bringing this up, but I found it to be just a wonderful little nugget of hilariousness that made me start thinking, oh, I could make fun little change the lyrics of popular songs to make this time also kind of a little more humorous. And so I wanted you to share that with everybody before we wrap.
Okay, so little premise. I did a sketch in Second City where I had to sing as Cher live. And so they nicknamed me Sherrick. So I decided to kind of rewrite Cher's Believe. So it goes, no matter how hard I try, I just have to stay inside because I don't want to get corona from you. It's so sad that it's here now, but don't give in to fear now. Cause after all is said and done, we're gonna step into the sun. Oh, do you believe in life after Rona?
Oh, I love it. I
Even when
think
my
it's
heels
so
for the whole
wonderful.
interview, in the spirit of drag.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for giving, just providing a little levity in the day. I appreciate it. I'm sure that our I was about to say our coronavirus community, our community also appreciates it as well. And we're so happy to have had you on today.
Anytime. I
Yeah.
love that you're doing this series, and I can't wait to see everyone else. And it really is a beautiful community that we have through TED. And I know it's going to keep doing great things. I'm so proud of the work that you guys are doing in Texas. And hopefully one day I'll get to come back down and be a part of it again. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. I'm just going to wrap up real quick, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much for your time today. I really hope that you enjoyed Eric being on and that you took a little bit of skills on how you can also create humor in your day-to-day. We're so eager to hear more from all of you. So please let us know. Let us know your thoughts, what more you want to hear or ideas from. Share with us how you're finding humor in your day-to-day. You can email us at registration@TEDxSanAntonio.com. And also make sure to check us out anywhere on social media at TEDxSanAntonio. We're pretty much everywhere. If you want to, or if you find that you're seeing any power of ideas manifesting in your community anywhere, make sure to share it on social media. Use the hashtag #PowerOfX, and we'll make sure to go ahead and send it on forward. That makes it for our first week of Red Dot Cafe. We've been really excited and happy to be here with all of you. Next Tuesday, we'll be joined by Reframe 2019 speaker Elizabeth Crawford, who'll be speaking to all of us on tips and tricks with finances during this crisis period. So I hope to see you guys then. Take care and have a wonderful Thursday.